Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael and we're going to be getting right back into some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Now, without further ado, let's begin. This story was posted by a throwaway account in the True Off My Chest subreddit. The post is titled, "I need to confess to my wife that I let things get out of hand with another woman. My wife and I are in a long-distance relationship. She works abroad while I take care of our sons who are 4 and 3 years old and do odd jobs. Originally, we lived together, but our kids ended up in a dangerous situation and I didn't want that to happen again. Quitting her job wasn't an option for her, so I moved back to our home country with the kids while she stayed abroad. She visits us a few times a year, and I moved in with close family friends. It was a hard and painful decision. I had a lot of resentment over my wife prioritizing her job over our family. But I love her, I couldn't imagine not being with her. I thought about divorce, but we decided to try to work things out. The other woman was my friend when we were little kids. After my mother died, I left my hometown and moved in with my dad, losing touch with that friend. However, I stayed connected with some other people from that town throughout my life. When I moved back home with the kids, I started visiting my hometown more often to see my mom's grave and reconnect with my old neighbors. When I met my old friend again, I was excited to see her, nostalgic for everything from my childhood. It started out innocent. I was just happy to have another connection to that part of my life. She has a son too, who is 6 years old, so we ended up taking our kids to the park together while we had coffee and caught up. It was innocent at first and I told my wife I'd reconnected with her. My wife was fine with it. She jokingly asked if she should be jealous but didn't mean it. She trusted me, so I feel terrible about what happened next. We met up a couple of times a month from then on. I'm not sure when it lost its innocence, but I began to realize that I was becoming infatuated with her. We would hug every time we met and before we left, and I felt wistful when she hugged me. She started talking about how her ex mistreated her and her son, which made me feel protective of her. She began making comments like, "My son is so good with your sons. It's like they are brothers." I also talked to her about some issues that bothered me in my relationship with my wife, and she sympathized. I realized that I enjoyed the attention and found myself entertaining fantasies about being with her instead of my wife. I kept thinking about what life would have been like if I had never met my wife and had instead reconnected with my old friend. Perhaps we could have had the same kids together and been happy without all this pain. Objectively speaking, she seems like a better match for me than my wife. She puts her kids first and appreciates me for who I am. My wife does too, but it often feels like my children and I are an afterthought for her. Even when she's home spending time with us, she's always thinking about her job. My wife is a good person who does important work, but her job traumatizes her. She was already traumatized before she started it. She took on this job as a way to cope with her past, but ends up re-traumatizing herself over and over again. My kids and I pay the price for that. I'm not trying to justify my actions, I'm just trying to explain how I've come to feel this way. My childhood friend always complimented me on my looks, how good of a dad I am, and my physical strength. It's as if she appreciated the unique things about me. In contrast, it started to feel like my wife loved me just because I was there for her. She would have loved anyone who loved her, and I happened to be the only one who did at the time. It wasn't always like this, but that's how it eventually felt as my wife became increasingly distracted by her job. I didn't really notice it until reconnecting with my friend highlighted this contrast. I know I should not have let things get that far. At first, it was just an occasional thought, and I brushed it off as intrusive, telling myself, yeah, everyone has inappropriate thoughts, but what matters is your actions. But I let it go too far. In hindsight, some of our friendly banter was really more like flirting, and it was not appropriate. That's an action, not a thought. Anyway, today was a reality check. She said she wanted to talk to me about something serious without the kids there, so I let my friend whom I live with babysit and met up with her. She basically confronted me with the fact that we obviously have feelings for each other and said I should leave my wife for her. Immediately, I realized the amount of nonsense I was feeding myself and her. I instantly felt so bad. I didn't deny having feelings, but maybe I should have. She kept insisting I think it over, and when she saw how upset I was, she said she'd let me think about it, then left. I should have told her, no, there is nothing to think over. I love my wife and I'm not leaving her, but I didn't say anything. That in itself is weighing on me. I need to tell my wife. I know, I just don't even know where to begin. The next time she's coming home is in October. I feel like this is the kind of thing to say face to face, but I don't want to wait that long, and I don't want her to come all this way to have a nice time and ruin it. I could leave the kids with my friends and go visit her, but on top of the money issues and logistical issues, even that thought makes me sick. I keep imagining her smiling and being delighted to see me, and then how devastated she's going to be when I tell her. I can't stop thinking about her face. I feel sick. I don't want to tell her at all and just never see my childhood friend again, but I know honesty is the best policy. I owe it to her to be honest. I just don't know what to do. I feel so wrong and stupid. I don't want to tell my friends. I think one of them would be really angry at me for almost cheating, and the other might actually encourage me to leave my wife. I feel like I need someone to tell me what to do because I can't process. Edit. Okay, these comments are overwhelming and I need to sleep. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk to my friends about what's going on and see if they'll be able to watch my kids while I visit my wife and tell her what's going on. If not, I can probably ask a few other people. If that doesn't work, then I'll just tell her over Zoom. I'm also going to text my childhood friend that I don't want to see her again and then block her. I'm not going to leave my wife. If she leaves me, I'm going to stay single. I'm not going to date my ex-friend. I will always love my wife, and I don't think it would be fair to anyone for me to date anyone else while I still love her. To avoid having to answer the same questions over and over, my wife is an aid worker. She doesn't do it for the money, she believes God called her to do it. I do gig jobs and sometimes construction. I choose to work more flexibly so I can spend more time with my kids. I put my wife through college, I'm not freeloading off her. The reason I left with the kids is that we were carjacked at gunpoint. My wife changes locations a lot, so living somewhere safe but still closer to her isn't really an option. It's either travel with her officially through her organization or stay put somewhere. I don't think my childhood friend originally intended to cheat with me, but I guess that doesn't matter anymore. Edit 2. To everyone telling me to get a stable job so my wife can come home, you misunderstand. Do you think my wife and I haven't spoken about this? She is never going to quit her job. She made that very clear. Her job is her priority. I promise you, she's not doing it for the money. I'm not forcing her to continue by refusing to work more. If she said she would even consider quitting if I found a more stable job, I'd do that in a heartbeat. Anyway, I talked things over with my friends and they were understanding. The plan is to fly over and see my wife next week, but we still have to make arrangements. I thought about contacting my wife's boss to see if we could do a surprise visit, but it seemed cruel to show up and surprise her, making her happy to see me only to break her heart. Instead, I called my wife and said everyone is okay, but that I have something bad to tell her that she should hear in person, and I'm going to fly out to see her. She said I should just tell her because otherwise she's going to worry about it the whole time, so I almost did. But then she said, no, don't tell me, I want to see you, so I didn't. User art needs more said. First off, as you said, you need to break it off and stop seeing her. Next up, you need to do some serious thinking. Can this situation with your wife continue as it is? What is the long-term plan here? Long distance is clearly not working for you. You need to be honest with yourself about your needs. Then you need to find remote couples counseling that can work with you and your wife. Get yourself into therapy. You have a lot going on in your marriage that needs to be addressed, and it starts with you figuring out what you need. User Flimsy Mammoth said, you definitely need to distance yourself and talk with your wife. However, I have a question regarding your wife. You say that her leaving her job is not an option. Why? Is it because she chooses not to leave, or is it because she is the primary earner? Also, are you working and supporting yourself and the kids, or is she supporting everyone? User Here for Mysteries said, please know your childhood friend played on every issue and insecurity to get your attention. She made sure you felt like she was the perfect match. She purposefully went after a married man. This was absolutely calculated and you went right along with it. She's not your perfect match. I guarantee that if you leave your wife for this viper, within a year you'll be wondering what happened to your perfect match. She's looking to break up your marriage, which makes her not a good person. You and your wife definitely have some issues to deal with, and now you've added inviting another woman into your relationship to make it even harder. ETA, no friend, especially not a good friend, makes the kind of comments this woman was making, particularly to a married man. If she were truly your friend, she would have been supporting you during your difficult time in your marriage. Instead, she set out to destroy it and insert herself in your wife's place. A few days later, OP posted an update. First, I want to thank everyone who commented civilly, regardless of your opinion. I especially appreciated hearing from people who had been in a similar situation or had experiences similar to another person I mentioned. I wasn't thinking very straight at the time, and I don't think I thanked everyone properly, but it was very kind of you to take the time to share your perspective. The other thing I should have addressed at the time is that a lot of people bashed my wife, and I didn't defend her as much as I should have. So I'm going to set the record straight now. First of all, people were saying she was cheating on me, but she would never ever do that. She is honest and loyal and a much better person than I am. Second, people claim my wife is negligent and doesn't care about me or our kids. This is also wrong. She's very loving. Yes, she is busy with her job, but she says she thinks about us every moment. When she is home, she spends as much time with me and the kids as she can. She does get distracted and thinks about work-related stressors, but that's because she sees things that affect her. It's not because she doesn't care about us. She's not like half the parents out there who ignore their kids because they're distracted by their phones. People were also bashing me in a way that I think was kind of over the top. Honestly, you can bash me, but don't bash my wife. My relationship problems don't mean she deserves to be criticized. I actually showed the post to my best friend, and she pointed out that many of you were probably just being sexist. You attacked my wife and said she didn't care about me or our kids because she doesn't get to see us much. But my friend pointed out that there are a lot of jobs predominantly held by men that require them not to see their kids much, and no one says they don't love their children or need to quit. So for everyone who said, my wife doesn't love our kids, would you say the same about dads who are in the military, truck drivers, or work on oil rigs? Would you claim they're all definitely cheating on their wives or tell their wives they should leave them? If not, then you're being sexist. And for everyone who told me to get a better job so my wife can come home, would you say that to a woman married to a man in one of those jobs? For those saying my wife and I shouldn't be married or have kids because she's an aid worker, do you think there shouldn't be any aid workers, or do you believe no aid workers should be allowed to get married and have kids just because of their job? You realize a lot fewer people would become aid workers if it meant they couldn't have a family, right? Your reasoning doesn't make any sense. Anyway, I saw my wife and told her everything, and we actually had a nice visit. She was glad to see me in spite of everything, and she insisted that I not tell her anything bad until after she showed me something. This was confusing to me, but I agreed. Anyway, it was a little waterfall, and it was beautiful. She said she visited the waterfall whenever she got a chance, that it reminded her of me, and that she wished she could show it to me every time. I nearly cried when she said that. I almost couldn't bring myself to tell her after that, but I had already told her I was going to share something bad, so I had to. We sat there for a while until she said she was ready to hear my bad news. As much as it killed me, I told her everything that happened. She tried to remain calm and understanding, but I could tell she was hurt. I almost wished she would have yelled and slapped me, but she just thanked me for being honest. She asked what I was going to do. I said I wasn't going to stay in touch with my former friend either way, but I hoped she would forgive me and come home to us in October as planned. She said I was already forgiven and asked me for more details about what exactly happened and how I felt, which I did my best to answer honestly. It was hard though. I could tell she was getting more and more upset. Eventually, she just said okay, and we walked back to her base without really talking at all. That night, we talked more. She knows it's hard for me to live the way we do, and she asked me again if I was sure I still wanted to be with her. I told her I knew she wasn't going to quit her job, but I talked about how one of the hardest things is that even when she comes home, her mind is on her job, and it's hard to see how sad and stressed she always is. She said she'd bring it up in therapy and try to work on being present in the moment with her family. She kept pressing me on whether there was anything else she could do better besides quitting her job. I told her how I felt, that sometimes it seems like she only loves me because I love her and that I could be anyone. She cried, apologized, said it's not true, and told me as many specific things as she could think of that she loves about me. I did the same for her. She said she was glad we talked and glad I was willing to keep working on our marriage because from the beginning, when I told her I had something bad to tell her in person, she just assumed I wanted a divorce. She said she's always worrying that I'm going to leave her, but she's grateful for every day I don't. I promised her I don't plan to and told her I worry about the same thing sometimes. It was a really good conversation, and the following days I went to her job site with her for a bit and helped out with a few things. The local kids were teasing my wife about me, which was adorable. Things aren't perfect, but they're going to be okay. I know a lot of people said that my wife should leave me because what I did was as bad as a physical affair. Confusingly, a lot of people also said I did nothing wrong. I think it's somewhere in between. I did something wrong, but I stopped it before it got that far. Many others say I should divorce my wife, but I'm not divorcing her. She has her flaws, but she's also one of the best people I know. All of her flaws are due to experiences she's been through that I can't even imagine. I chose to love her in spite of the things she can't give me. I will always love her. I'm not someone who can stop loving someone. Even if we divorced, I'd think about her and wonder if she was okay every single day. I can't be in a relationship with another person even if I wanted to because I'd never be over her. It wouldn't be fair to them. It's my wife or no one for me. User Bright Red Roof said, "This is an example of how mature adults go about resolving relationship issues. Good luck to you both, OP." Under this comment, user Simple Car said, "Agreed. I wish more people were able to own up to their mistakes and realize when things go too far so they can hit the brakes and get out before it's really too late. The thing about emotional affairs is that often, as OP explained, people try to lie to themselves until they can't anymore, and the truth becomes blatantly obvious and undeniable. What really matters at the end of it is how you handle that truth once you realize what you've been doing. He realized he was in the wrong, made a huge mistake, and owned up to it. I'm proud of him." User Praise Sub said, "Your friend just said the sexist comment to make you feel better. Even if a male was doing this, they would also be a bad parent. Multiple people told you that already, so don't try to flip the script. You both are still proving how little you actually care about these kids. You're both selfish and your kids deserve better. I can't stand when people have kids and then neglect them like this. Your wife is disrespecting her God by ignoring her children. Did you send these posts to your wife? Or are you also lying about that?" 2 months later, OP gave us his final post. This is a sort of update to my previous post in this sub, but it's also a lot of other things I want to get off my chest. I made a post here a while ago about realizing I was in an emotional affair with my old friend while my wife was working in the Philippines. That issue is resolved. My wife forgave me. I haven't spoken to my old friend at all anymore, and I'm much more careful with my other female friends. However, some of the comments I got on my last post have still been weighing on me. My wife is home now and she has some big news that I want to share. The good news is my wife is pregnant again, and I'm happy about it in spite of everything. I know. Some people in my last post were asking if I was using protection to avoid bringing more kids into the world. And honestly, no, we didn't. And I didn't want to admit that for obvious reasons. I don't have any defense for that other than I'm stupid. The other major thing is that my wife probably has OCD. Basically, my wife realized she was late and probably pregnant a long time ago, but originally didn't tell me or take a pregnancy test. She said it was like there were two different people in her head, and part of her was screaming to go get things figured out. But the part of her that actually had control refused to do anything besides carry on as usual. She was too scared to take a pregnancy test and get proof that she was pregnant because she knew she wouldn't be allowed to go on her next assignment because of the Zika virus. It was a lot of internal struggle before she finally got the courage to tell her therapist what was going on and actually take the pregnancy test. So even though she got pregnant in July, she hasn't had any kind of prenatal care yet. Also, she'd been hiding a lot of things from her therapist because she knew the therapist would make her take a break if they knew exactly what was going on in her head. So she wasn't honest about how she felt compelled to do this job or how she felt when she wasn't doing it. But she knew she needed to do right by her baby, so she finally told the therapist about the pregnancy, how she was having such a hard time doing anything about it, and then everything else came out. My wife described to me a bit more about how it feels to be in her head. It's not just that she thinks God wants her to do her job. The way she explained it, she constantly thinks about all the bad things happening in the world, every terrible thing she's ever seen, and every time she could have helped someone but didn't, even if she had a very good reason. This makes her feel like she has to be working. She thought all of these thoughts were God speaking to her, but she didn't tell the therapist that because she thought she wouldn't understand. When she finally told the therapist, she basically asked her if she thought God was loving, and if so, why God would want her to constantly think about things that made her miserable. That question finally made my wife open to accepting that she might have a mental illness rather than just having God talking to her. She is home now a couple of weeks earlier than planned, so she can get prenatal care and a more in-depth mental health assessment. Her therapist seems to think she has OCD, but can't actually diagnose her or prescribe medication. I feel so bad for her and like I've failed too. I feel like I should have tried to dig deeper with her about what she was feeling. My wife was more open with me than with her therapist about her thoughts, and I feel like I knew something was wrong, but I assumed she was telling the therapist everything and that the therapist was helping to the best of her ability. As much as I'm happy that I hope this means things are going to be better now, I know my wife feels awful, and that makes me feel awful. Basically, she was very devout and religious growing up, but after some traumatic events, she kind of lost her faith and felt like if God existed, he didn't approve of her. I met her around then, and she was definitely in a very dark place for a while. She says that when she started having thoughts about how she could fix the world, it was really reassuring because she thought she was finally getting her faith back. So it's been pretty crushing for her to lose that feeling. I'm hoping her therapist can help her with that as well. My wife doesn't trust religious leaders anymore, which makes it much harder for her to work through these issues. I believe in God, but I don't share the same beliefs as my wife and am less devout, so I don't always know what to say. I've told her I'm so sorry for what she's been going through and that I'm incredibly proud of her for finally seeking help from her therapist, even though it was so difficult. I told her I'm glad she was open with me and that I hope she knows she can rely on me for anything she needs. I also told her I'm sure God knows how hard it was for her to get help and that he's proud of her too. That made her cry, I think in a good way. Anyway, she's been home for a few days now and we're just taking things one day at a time. We have prenatal appointments coming up next week, but we're still trying to figure out the OCD appointment details. So far, we've just been cherishing family time as much as possible. The best news is that my wife says when she's done with maternity leave, instead of going back to work, she might try to go back to school. She wants to get her master's and learn another language or two. Part of the reason for this is that she would have more choices in her assignments and possibly be able to work with refugees here in the US instead of traveling all over. That way, we could find somewhere to live permanently as a family. She says she's not sure yet and wants to spend some time figuring things out. But for the first time in a long while, I am hopeful that we might be able to be happy together as a family someday. I really hope everything turns out positively. I feel bad for being happy since this is so hard on my wife, but I truly hope it will end up being a positive thing all around in the end. We've told my two closest friends about the new baby, but no one else yet. My best friend is almost as excited as I am. She keeps coming to me with gender reveal party ideas, like randomly in the middle of talking about the election or whatever. We're keeping it from the kids for just a little while longer because she's not very far along yet, and if God forbid the baby doesn't make it, we don't want the kids to be upset. So I keep telling her to be a little more subtle and she keeps forgetting. Luckily, the kids have no idea what she is talking about when she does that. User Objective Ticket said high chances that she forgave the cheating because of her OCD. It is very plausible that with so much conflict in her head, she didn't process or understand the extent of what OP did. I won't be surprised if, after treatment and when she is stabilized, she decides to divorce OP. User Lucky Lie said, good for you. Stop cheating and stay committed to your wife. Communicate with her and don't make excuses for why you did what you did. She has a long battle ahead of her, and the last thing she needs to worry about is whether she can trust you to respect and remain faithful to your marriage. I hope she finds herself and goes to therapy more for her own happiness. She deserves that. You're getting downvoted because people are still disgusted by what you've done. Reddit is not forgiving, so be grateful that your wife is willing to forgive you and strive to do better. Be a better man who is worthy of her because right now everyone knows you don't deserve her, and she could probably do much better than you. You ran when life got hard, and instead of talking to her, you jumped into the arms of your friend. You cheated, and your wife is dealing with the emotional fallout. Don't update again. You'll be downvoted more because Reddit hates cheaters. This is not the place for people who do that and expect grace. User Dear Parsnip said, congratulations. It seems that all the people who are happy for you and empathetic to your and your wife's situation are being downvoted, but I am glad things are looking up for you. Her potential diagnosis makes sense, and I'm happy she will be getting the help she needs. I also hope this means she will be a present spouse and parent, which is something you all need.